always knew I wanted to be a mom. This was one of my fundamental truths, but I was not going to become a mother by accident. My primary partners have been women for most of my adult life. I never hid my wishes, and when we met 20 years ago, my partner Sarah was nonetheless unbelieving of this. Children were not on her radar, nor in her dreams, but being a supportive partner, she came to encourage my wish to create a family. I envisioned giving birth to a child and then adopting a second, anticipating ovarian failure, the medical terminology, as I aged. I approached a dear friend, Greg, someone I'd known for several years and with whom we were studying Buddhism, if he would consider fatherhood. He was in a new relationship with Ismail, but they both had their dreams of family. Our conversation in the restaurant was one that I wish I could have eavesdropped upon. I had asked him to brunch, and we were jovial and kind to each other until we finished ordering, and then I dropped the question. Do you remember that time when we discussed our life paths and what we would do differently? And I said, my only regret was that I wasn't a mother yet. Well, I'm ready. Would you consider being our dad? His eyes widened and he gave a nervous chuckle, saying, I was wondering why you wanted to talk with me. He was also delighted, and once he discussed it with Ismail, they were in. This process involves syringes and specimen cups, urgent calls, I'm ovulating, trips across town from their house to ours, cradling a donation to keep it at body temperature, and whispers in passing at events, I got my period. It was all to no avail. Eventually, we recognized that since adoption was always a part of our plan, we needed to explore that. The dads, as they had come to be known, assumed that without a biological connection, they wouldn't be included. I felt differently. I anticipated international adoption and wanted my girls, since girls are more often discarded as children, to know men on a routine basis, to find them not mysterious creatures or confusing, to not feel a need to seek men out in order to either fulfill a missing piece or to better understand them. We eventually decided to move forward with adoption with four intentional parents. Since we did decide to pursue international adoption, I legally had to proceed toward adoption as a single parent. This was ironic, since the last thing I actually wanted to be was a single parent. I saw the emotional and financial toll it took on my mother, and because we were planning on raising our girls surrounded by parents. I was born into an unconventional family. My parents were each the black sheep in their respective families. Each were the first in their families to go to college, and this opened their eyes to the world outside. My father, born in a dirt floor shack in Appalachia, grew up to become a minister and then went into theater, and not just theater, but mime. My mother, a Wisconsin farm girl, was passionate about social justice. Bonded in part by their identity as outsiders, our family focus was on furthering our father's mime career. This was somewhat dysfunctional. We moved often and lived all over the world. Our most dramatic transitions were from New York City to New Delhi and then on to a small town in Tennessee. I enjoyed some rich experiences, but was also coming of age in a time with porous boundaries. When my father eventually felt overwhelmed by the experience of parenting, he simply left, and our mother became our fierce and sometimes bitter protector. My mother, sisters, and I had long functioned as a unit since we were each other's constant in our frequent moves when our father was often absent. After his actual departure, we turned even more inward for a time. It was very difficult to be a young adolescent and to try to support my mother through her grief over the end of her marriage. She worked hard, cut corners where she could, used a little red wagon to take our laundry through the snow to a laundromat when we could not afford to replace the broken washer, and had to sell our piano to buy groceries. Although a formidable woman, she became suicidal for a while, and I struggled to lift her spirits and maintain a semblance of normalcy for my younger sisters. In response to her initial depression, I refused to ever be in the position to lose myself through someone else's actions. Having to grow up so fast and assume adult responsibilities wore on me and pushed me to graduate from high school early so that I had a socially acceptable reason to leave home and go to college. As I dreamt of my future family, I thought of my own nomadic childhood and wanted to provide a different life for my future children. I wanted the good parts of my family, the adventure, the artistic fulfillment, the social awareness, but I definitely wanted a calm environment and a family created with clarity and intention. It seemed like the four of us, potential parents, all friends, all connected by spirituality and respect, could forge a family together. Although we had to proceed with me in the forefront as the parent, our agreed upon goal was to parent together. I completed the paperwork and funding toward our adoptions, but there were no templates for four-parent intentional family. I researched extensively, paid attention to signs from the universe, tried to give equal time to both my head and my heart, and eventually we adopted our baby girl Maya from Nepal when she was almost a year old. That trip was remarkable, several intrepid voyagers visiting the beautiful and remote country in the throes of political drama between nationalists and Maoists. Entire departments of the government were displaced, and at one site I had to be patient while the bureaucrats searched for a key to unlock the one copier to provide me with a copy of Maya's paperwork that now signified I was her mother. Kathmandu would be shuttered for days at a time, and anyone found on the street was suspect. Obtaining her visa to travel to the U.S. involved the assistance of a dear Nepali friend who drove me through the streets on his motorcycle with his license plates obscured and waited for me out of sight in the bushes while I completed the necessary paperwork to bring her to our home. Knowing how deeply I love my sisters and mindful that, given our uncommon family structure, we knew we wanted Maya to have a sibling and co-conspirator, someone with whom she shared a history, we followed another dream and adopted Priya from India when she was 8 and Maya 3. Adopting out of birth order is frowned upon in the adoption world, and it was challenging to have a child who had lived 5 years of her life in orphanages. The process alone took several years in which she was not able to know us, her future family pining for her, half a world apart. Each night, Maya and we would go into our backyard and send kisses to the moon to deliver to Priya, half a world away. We kept a picture of her on the table and would offer her food each day. Despite the warnings, I felt strongly that our family was capable of meeting her where she was and providing her with a loving family. The trip to get Priya was one I took alone. I had to make it a short trip as it was too complicated to plan for our entire family. So I traveled to Mumbai and Delhi for a week and then returned home with our brave new girl. I could not imagine what was going through her head when she met me. She came bouncing into the orphanage, lightly touching the desk, a book, a pile of papers, and then came to me and said, "Mama?" I nodded enthusiastically and replied in Marathi, her birth language, "Yes, and I've waited so long to meet you. I love you so much." She smiled and then turned to the 19-year-old taxi driver and said, "Daddy?" No. I tried to imagine what the poor lad was thinking. Although they told me she knew English, she initially spoke just 3 words in English: finished, butterfly, and ketchup. Once we came home, she reminded me of an infant, albeit an 8-year-old one, needing to keep me within her sight for assurance. Some of her tantrums were more epic than a toddler's because she had more force behind them. I knew that as an older child, she needed to learn attachment and connection in much the same way that a baby would. Although quite capable, I sometimes carried her around the house like an infant, helped her dress and tie her shoes, allowed her to re-experience herself as a baby with parents close at hand. In the beginning, I got some pushback from her other parents. In our country, we seem quite consumed with independence, pulling ourselves up, reaching maturity as fast as possible, but this seemed the wrong tack to take with Priya. We did allow her to be a baby again, however momentarily, and to learn that her needs would be met in every way we possibly could. Being an older child from India, we also challenged her. She was not accustomed to knowing gay people, nor to four-parent families. But I counted on the extended families in India that often live together and move in tandem to help put her at ease. Our youngest, having been with us since she was a baby, was cool. She'd announce to people, "I have 2 moms and 2 dads." Most kids would think that was awesome. Most adults thought we were a somewhat enlightened, divorced, and then reblended family. But our oldest had to learn her own way to come to terms with a 4-parent family, a transracial family with 3 white parents and 1 Latino dad, an adoptive family, and 1 with older parents. For some reason, she had anticipated being an only child to a single parent. Instead, she got an unruly family unit that, regardless of her language skills, she had no words for. It has been almost 12 years since Priya came home, 14 for Maya. Those years resemble the old adage, the days are long and the years are short. This past year in particular has had several threshold experiences. Priya graduated from high school and went away to college, and Maya is now thriving in high school. Priya was accepted into the college of her first choice, and as we prepared for her departure, we were surrounded by family, both chosen and related, to help her on the next step of her journey. The last afternoon we were all together, we sat around the picnic table and each shared words of wisdom with Priya for college, with Maya for high school, and with Carolina, our niece, for her own high school journey. We slowly went around the table, all of us offering blessings as if we were a magical fairy god family. The advice ranged from cliché to profound. Be open to new experiences. Be safe. Focus more on people's actions than their words. Don't leave a friend alone at a party. Embrace it all. As we wound down, Ismail raised his glass and said, "Look around you. We are all here because of you. You are so loved. You will always have us to depend on." And I remembered that from across the world, carved from our hopes and dreams, these brave and beautiful young women came into our lives and gave us something we had never been before, nor could be without them. They made us a family.